everyone. I see there's close to 150 people visiting, and we'll have some more coming. We're really delighted to have you join us today for this very important and valuable presentation with Fiona Ma, talking about the Governor's Master Plan on Aging. And you'll be introduced to Fiona, our State Treasurer, in a few moments, but I just wanted to do a welcome from Ashby Village. Ashby Village is your host today for this event, and it's part of our Arts and Culture series that has been going for a couple years, and again, we continue to have really exciting and important events to discuss the issues of the day and the things that are of most importance to us. I, again, really am glad we're all here today indoors, trying to keep the smoke at bay, and it does feel like a critical moment of challenge for our state in particular, and in fact, way beyond that. But so Ashby Village is an organization that's helping to assist and support people to age well in our homes. We're part of a larger village movement, and we have been operating just over 10 years. We've celebrated our 10th anniversary. I'm delighted that you've joined us now. And if you haven't learned more about Ashby Village, you can check us out on our website. We have regular introductory events, and we'd welcome you to join that. We also wanted to just let you know that we are actively have a new initiative around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're really rigorously looking at our organization, our structures, and our own personal, doing our personal work and organizational work to see how we can contribute to this most essential shift in consciousness and equity and justice in our country. So you'll be hearing more about that. We do have a subsidized membership fund that Ashby Village runs, and try to build on inclusion in that regard. And I just wanted to let you know that today's event is free. We are offering it to our community and beyond. And we are a nonprofit organization, and we do rely on your contributions to help support us. So if you care to make a donation, we would be ever so grateful, and it will fund both these programs, our organization, the way we're serving people, as well as our subsidized membership fund. So with that, I want to pass it on to Marcia Freedman, who is one of the chairs of our Arts and Culture team, who is just, again, putting on these extraordinary events. So Marcia.
Thank you, Andy, and welcome to everybody. I'm very pleased to tell you that I'm co-chair of the Arts and Culture team, and Rochelle Lefkowitz is the other co-chair. And the other members of the team are Betty Webster, Joanne Carter, Irene Marcos, and Sigrid Duesberg. We have enjoyed enormously being able to sponsor and plan these events for the past 3 years, I think it is now, almost 4. And I want to let you know as well that we have a wonderful upcoming event on the 18th of the month. We are very honored to have Robert Reich, who is going to be talking about the upcoming election and his analysis of what he believes is going on. We're going to hear today about the Governor's Master Plan on Aging, and the recommendations for the master plan are being finalized next week and will be submitted to the Governor and to his cabinet for consideration. One of the recommendations, we hope, is going to be for a proposal to institute a long-term services and support benefit as a public benefit, publicly funded benefit, which would support home and community-based long-term care. It's very long overdue in our country. Most developed countries have such a benefit. We don't have anything nationally. There is now something in the state of Washington. And if we do that in California, we'll be among the first states to really set a pattern for the rest of the country. LTSS has been a major focus of another group that I'm involved in, Elder Action, which is the social justice interest group as part of Ashby Village. If you are interested in knowing more about Elder Action, and what we're doing, you could just send us an email to elderactionnow@gmail.com. That's all one word, elderactionnow, all lowercase. So finally, I want to just say procedurally, if you have questions and comments that you would like to ask at the end of Ms. Ma's presentation, please put them in the chat box, and then Sigrid Duesberg will read them out to the treasurer and to her assistant afterwards. And finally, I want to introduce to you the person who is really responsible for having us be able to contact the treasurer, and that is Deborah Matthews, who is going to introduce the treasurer. Deborah is a community political activist, an educator, a realtor, and broker. She's a former commissioner and chair to the city of Berkeley, serving in the areas of housing, zoning, and planning. It has been her pledge, and I'm going to read what she has written. It has been her pledge to empower individuals and communities to participate and obtain equal distribution of available resources so that the few do not benefit from the labor of many. I want to add to that introduction that Fiona is also co-founder of South Berkeley Now, which is a group that I have been supporting and we have been supporting in Elder Action. It's a group that's working to realize a vision for the reformation of the Adeline corridor, which would include green space, permanent home for the flea market, and a lot of affordable housing. So with that, I give you Deborah.
Thank you so much, Marcia. It's such a pleasure to be here today. And also, Fiona, thank you for accepting our invitation to join us here in community. Our state and local governments are often referred to as laboratories for democracy. In many cases, they are the forefront of major innovative policies, breaking new ground in areas of healthcare, infrastructure, education, and housing. The reality is that many of these advancements would not be possible if it were not for our state elected officials. Today, we're going to hear from our own state official, State Treasurer Fiona Ma, who has championed the intersect and bridging our community needs to state governing policies and protections for our residents, with a special emphasis to the most vulnerable. I'm a volunteer here at Ashby Village and a focused political activist representing the residents of Berkeley. It is my pleasure to work with Fiona Ma. It has been a pleasure to work with her in the past and to have her with us today. I invite you to receive her expert, financial, women's leadership in action that makes a difference in our state, in our Bay Area, and here in Berkeley. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you, Deborah, for inviting me here. As I told the organizers earlier, she actually booked me 3 months in advance. And I'm usually like, that's a long time out. But she's like, no, it's important because of the timing of the event. And we want to make sure that we properly prepare. And I see 179 participants on this call. I've done 90 webinars, and this is the most attendees I have seen in public events. So you guys are doing amazing. Plus, I also think that this is a hot topic, and it has been a hot topic. First off, to Andy, thank you for talking about the wildfires. This is probably the worst that we have seen in the state of California. My husband is a firefighter and has been on the Apple Fire and the Dolan Fire, and will probably be going out on another fire this coming week. And so, we all need to be very vigilant and very careful when we are outdoors, especially. But thank you for reminding us, and it's great that we are all able to do these virtual calls indoors in the safety of our own home. This topic is very important to me. I have lived with my parents for the last 15 years and have seen the transition as they age in place with me. And that was one of our commitments early on, is my brother my sister or myself, one of us was going to be living and taking care of my parents as they age. And I am the oldest. I don't have kids, and therefore I'm the most stable, I guess. And so therefore it has been on me, which has been amazing, really, to be able to spend more time with my parents, but also to watch them and go through the difficulties, whether it's healthcare, right? Trying to get out of a system when you need specialty care. My mother broke her hip. She had her knees done. She's been in emergency care for a long time. And of course, you know, all the paperwork that comes about when you're not sure you're going to get reimbursed if you call the ambulance or have a 911 emergency. And all of these are major stressors, not only to, you know, the individual, but also the family members who are trying to make sure that everything is covered in our lifetime. My husband also lives 3 blocks from where he was born and raised, you know, watching his dad in retirement. We also moved my mother-in-law from Tennessee to Lake County, to Lakeport, so that she could be closer. And we are also planning the day when she has to come and perhaps live with us as well. And so this is a very, very important topic, I think, for many of us here on the call, but also with the silver tsunami, right? The fact that we are going to have so many more seniors here in the state of California, and we want folks to age and stay in place. And so I have a number of responsibilities under my office as a state treasurer. But before I just give a little plug for what I'm doing, I'm sure Miss Patty Berg is on this call. How many of you know Miss Patty Berg? All right. So yes, Sarah knows her. So Patty, you know, got the email for this event, and she emails me and she says, darling, number 1, it is called the Master Plan for Aging, not on aging. Okay, I got it. And then she went on to say, before your call, perhaps you'd like to call me and I can give you a briefing on everything that is happening. And in addition, you should probably call Sarah Steenhausen of the SCAN Foundation, which I did. And I found out that Sarah and the SCAN Foundation, we thank them for being the major sponsor for our master care plan for aging, and also probably one of the most involved people in this process. And so I asked her to be on here as my subject matter expert, because I'm sure there are going to be many questions that I cannot ask, and I see a couple of them coming through in the chat as we speak. Noah Starr is also on the call, and he will be assisting me and also putting in either emails, phone numbers, or websites for some of the topics that I am talking about. And I also do want to give a shout out to my legislative staffers, Casey O'Connor and Blake Johnson. They really were the main folks who helped me sponsor our 3 bills in 2019 on aging. And I just want to go over a couple of them. You probably know it was AB 1287 by Assemblymember Nazarian, and it was signed by the governor in October 2019, which would require the Aging and Disability Resource Connections program into a statewide no wrong door system, so that we could better access information and services in a one-stop shop place. Then AB 1382 by Assemblywoman Aguiar Curry, that was vetoed by the governor in October of 2019, not because he did not believe in what was in the bill, but as I think Sarah will touch upon and talk about, he signed an executive order back in June of 2019 and really tried to make it as comprehensive as possible. So unfortunately, that bill was vetoed, and that dealt with workforce development and family giver support. And then the third bill that we sponsored was SB 611 by Ana Caballero. That also was vetoed, and that would have established the Housing Older Persons Effectively Task Force, called HOPE. as part of the state's master plan for aging. And again, some of those elements in the bill are probably in the governor's plan, and I'm going to leave that for Sarah to really talk about that a little bit later. And so in the legislature 2006 to 2012, as many of you remember, we were going through the Great Recession. And so we did not have a lot of money, and it was difficult to pass bills that did not cost money. We did our best. And then after I left the legislature, we had more money. And I think that's when all of these bill ideas were put on the table, since now that we have money, we wanted to make sure that we dealt with those important issues like long-term care, aging, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, all the important programs and services that we are starting to depend on. I got elected to state treasurer in November of 2018 and started with the governor, Gavin Newsom, on January 2019. And we have been very active working on so many issues, including this issue. And like I mentioned, the governor signed an executive order, N1419, in June of 19, which directed his secretary of the California Health and Human Services Agency to work with a broad array of stakeholders to develop a master plan for aging by October 2020. Well, given COVID-19, some of that work has been delayed, but it is still a priority with the governor and his administration. And I think Sarah will be able to talk about that in a little bit. But the Treasurer's Office, for those of you who don't know what we do, I am one of 8 constitutional officers, and I am your banker. So that means every tax, fine, revenue, fee, interest comes into my bank every year, totaling about $2.6 trillion. That's trillion with a lot of zeros. And we have 3 main divisions. My cash management, which manages all the cash inflows and outflows. The second is my investments team. So we invest any idle cash for the state, as well as invest for about 2,200 local government units, essentially providing an interest-bearing checking account for local governments. And then the third area is my public finance, where I issue all of the state's GO bonds, revenue bonds, as well as underwrite bonds for the UC system and the CSU system as well. And so we are very busy with that, those 3 divisions. And then I also chair 16 different boards and commissions. We manage, for example, affordable housing. We manage all of the tax-exempt bonds, as well as the 9% and the 4% tax credits that helps keep affordable housing units affordable for 55 years. We also have an agency that helps fund hospitals, children's hospitals, and clinics, and also schools, both charter schools, community colleges, and we are now also building community college housing for students and teachers. So I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, but one thing I'm trying to do is to use my resources to assist different communities as we are trying to build, for example, community developments that are going to allow seniors to live with families and perhaps work collaboratively with preschoolers, like we've seen in some of these beautiful pilot projects, right? We don't want to just stick people in a community that doesn't have access to transportation and healthcare and just the resources that we all need as we age. So I am also feeling it. I'm 54 years old. Got hot flashes for the last 2 years. I'm getting like a little bit of arthritis in my hands. And so I am also starting to understand and feel what it's like to get older. So I am here as your resource. I also want to give you a dedicated email. If any of you have questions that we don't answer here today, or you're just having difficulty accessing any type of government resource, getting someone on the phone, please email me at askfiona@treasure.ca.gov. And Catherine Asbury is monitoring that, and she will try to answer all of your questions or connect you with the person you need to speak with. So don't get frustrated. Don't give up. You can always email me at askfiona@treasure.ca.gov. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah right now, since Sarah knows all of the details and what's been happening and how we can get more involved in this process. So thank you, Sarah, Senior Policy Analyst for the SCAN Foundation, for joining us here today.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Treasurer Ma. I think one of the things that's so critical at this time with the development of a master plan is to have strong state leadership. So the leadership that you have shown in this issue area is critical and was really instrumental, I think, in getting the governor to commit to sponsoring a master plan for aging. So thank you for your tremendous support of these issues. I just wanted to provide a very high-level overview of the process for the master plan for aging and where it is. I'm happy to answer any questions and speak a bit to the LTSS publicly funded benefit that I know some of you have questions about. It's a concept that's in consideration right now, and I wanted to tell you a bit about where that is. And then I can talk a bit about where villages might fit into this broader picture of the master plan for aging. So as Treasurer Ma said, in June of 2019, the governor released an executive order that called for the development of a master plan for aging. And his goal with the master plan is to help California prepare for the aging of its population and to make it a truly age-friendly state so that all people can age with dignity and independence, regardless of where you live or your income level or the color of your skin, but that everybody there should be equity in aging with dignity and independence. One of the things that he noted is that this is an issue that touches all areas, as you all know. It touches not only healthcare and social services, but it's about housing and transportation. It's about workforce, our paid caregiver workforce, but it's also about unpaid family caregivers who frankly are the backbone of this system. Unpaid family caregivers provide 2/3 of all support to older adults in their home over the age of 65. So again, it's really important to think about how do we support, I'm sure many of you have been or are dealing with caregiver support issues on how you help your loved ones stay at home and in the community. So in establishing this executive order, the governor called on the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Agency, which is Secretary Mark Galley, to convene two groups. One is an internal, which Treasurer Ma referred to as this cabinet level work group that would take the recommendations that come from public stakeholder members and then work with those recommendations to develop a plan that will be presented to the governor. The governor also established a Stakeholder Advisory Committee of about 34 individuals representing consumers, providers, caregivers, academics, and advocates. And that Stakeholder Advisory Committee has been meeting for about the past year. Next Tuesday, they're having their final meeting with the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Agency to present all of their recommendations. They're going to have one big report across 4 goal areas that cover those issues I was telling you about, dealing with how we can ensure that we all get the services and supports we need in the setting of our choice, how we can ensure that we have livable age and disability friendly communities for all, how we can ensure that our healthcare system is coordinated and integrated, and 4, how we can address poverty, income security, and safety issues in the state. And that has to do also with disaster preparedness, such as what we're dealing with right now with the fires. So all of those recommendations are going to be submitted next week. The meeting is for the general public as well, so I encourage all of you, after I'm done making a few remarks, I will put the link up for more information so that you can follow that discussion and make any of your remarks. So again, the state, after they get these recommendations from the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, for the next few months, they're going to be developing their plan, the master plan for aging. And the goal of the state is to release the master plan for aging by December of this year. So in a few months, we will see what that final plan looks like. I imagine that it's going to lay out some goals and a vision for where we want to be over the next 10 years to prepare for the aging of our state. And then it might have some more near-term priorities of focus items that have to be dealt with now. Clearly, not everything can be done in 1 year. So I think what's important to recognize is that you all will play a very critical role, not just right now as the plan's being formulated, but afterwards, because we're hopeful that the state will make this a process where it's an iterative plan, a living plan that can be updated every few years. So your work is all going on, but it's just beginning with in terms of the master plan for aging. Just in terms of the long-term services and supports financing, I know this is something that is of interest to all of you, and it is probably the most critical issue impacting our system right now. As you all know, many people are not aware that Medicare does not pay for long-term care. So if you, as Treasurer Ma says, you know, if your loved one breaks a hip and ends up in the home, Medicare will pay for the first 100 days of rehabilitation care. But after that time, if somebody needs any care on the long term, just non-medical services and supports, people are often shocked to see that they have to pay out of their own pocket for these services, and it's extremely expensive. So anything to do with, you know, longer term care in the home, or if you want to send your loved one to adult daycare, assisted living, all of those long-term care services cost quite a lot of money, and particularly living in a nursing home is extremely cost prohibitive at over $100,000 a year. So the question to the state right now is, how are we going to make the system more affordable? Because right now, about half of all long-term care expenditures nationally are covered by Medicaid. And that's a really high number. That means that a lot of people have to impoverish themselves essentially to pay for their long-term care. And about a little under a half of the care is paid for out of people's own pocket. Long-term care insurance, which when it was developed as a product in the 90s, it was envisioned that we would have a flourishing long-term care insurance industry that would provide the bulk of financing for people's long-term care. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with this product, but essentially long-term care insurance has become extremely expensive. The premiums have skyrocketed for many people who still have policies, and the insurance policies don't accept everybody who have pre-existing conditions. So many of the people that do need long-term care insurance can't get it, and the younger people who are working that they need to enroll aren't purchasing it. So it's been the product in the industry has had a hard time getting enough uptake. So only about 5% of all long-term care expenditures nationally are covered by insurance, private insurance. So it's really important that the state figure out a way to resolve this long-term care financing crisis. This is a crisis for families, it's a crisis for consumers, but it's also a crisis for the state, and it's only going to get worse with the aging of our population. So to address this issue, there has been a study that was commissioned by the state, which just was released its final, actually on Friday, it released its final recommendations about what are some of the policy options and what's the actuarial analysis of how we could do a public benefit long-term care option. So this is the sort of benefit that people would have universal access to. Ideally, everybody would pay into it, but then anybody who needs long-term care services after a certain amount of time, depending on how the policies are established, would be able to get access to some sort of coverage for long-term services and supports. This was just a study that was released. So there is no program right now in place, but I think what's going to happen is that the state We'll look at the recommendations of this study, and then hopefully it will be included as part of the master plan for aging. I think it's important to note that anything that is funded through a public benefit for long-term care, long-term services and supports would not be able to be financed through our state general fund dollars. We need to figure out what the financing mechanism is for it. So some of the important points to consider is how is it financed, what would it cover, and who would it cover? So we'll be looking for, I can send a link to that final report after I finish my opening remarks. That's where that issue is. And I encourage you all to keep tracking it and to speaking up. I think you all have been amazing advocates in speaking to the need for a publicly funded benefit. And then finally, I just wanted to make a few remarks on the importance of the village model and how you really have a role in the master plan for aging. I think one of the really critical elements of the village model is that it's so uniquely adapted to each local community. It's grassroots oriented. It's formed and developed by the people who will be using that model. Oftentimes when you have state administered programs, it's the state, putting a model down at the local level and saying, here, make this work. But this is something that you all have developed and made work, working together to try and develop creative ways to staying at home and to building community as people age so that they can age with the services and supports they need. It's not clear exactly how the state will incorporate the villages into its final plan, but I do think they're part of this critical fabric at the local level to ensuring people have the ability to age with dignity and independence. One of the things that the governor noted in his call for a master plan is the importance of public-private partnerships. So I really hope that this is one of the models that are called out for something that needs some sort of partnership with the state, but also needs a partnership with the healthcare sector, with other sectors, the private sector, because I know that sustainability is always an issue for villages, and we need to figure out a way that they can be sustainable and available to all at the local level, because I really feel like this is one of the key systems that helps people stay at home and not be isolated in their own home. So I just want to thank you for the tremendous work you're all doing, and I'll pause there to see if there's anybody else who wants to make remarks or has questions, or if Treasurer Ma wants to add anything else.
Yeah, so I do have a couple of things. Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us about the financing mechanisms. Many of you know that we passed our June 30th budget with a $54 billion deficit. Now, Governor Brown did a really great job during his 8 years of paying down that wall of debt and squirreling as much money into our rainy day fund. And even then, with a $26 billion rainy day fund at the beginning of the year, this year, we still, due to the pandemic, face a $54 billion deficit, and we are hoping that the federal government will send over at least $14 billion more to help us out with rounding out our budget. Otherwise, be prepared for more furloughs and for more cuts. And so we need everyone to still advocate with our federal elected delegation and let them know what some of the programs and services you are all dependent on, and that potentially will be cut if the federal government cannot pass another fiscal stimulus bill over the next few months. So that is one way. Sarah, I don't know if you also want to talk about Prop 19. Propositions are also a way that we can generate funding. Sometimes in the legislature, if they cannot come to consensus, then we put initiatives on the ballot and we let the voters decide on important issues. So on the November ballot, one of the initiatives I am strongly supporting is Proposition 19. And that will allow seniors and people with disabilities to be able to essentially downsize and still continue to live in the state of California, continuing with your low Prop 13 tax basis. The We also closed the loophole, because what has been happening sometimes is that people leave their homes to an heir, and the heirs move out of the state, and then they continue to rent out the 3 or 4 bedroom home. And that really wasn't the purpose of Prop 13. It was really trying to help those on fixed income stay in their homes and not be taxed out of their homes per se. But this loophole has been there, and it hasn't opened up additional housing for families, right, who want to stay in California, because now they're used as rental property. So we've closed that loophole. And then also the savings would go to fire suppression to help with a lot of the wildfires that are happening. Also go back to schools and local governments, which is desperately needing funds right now. So take a look at that, Prop 19. And then also we, on the Treasurer's side, we've really pivoted from in-person webinars to creating these resource guides. So we have 6 resource guides for seniors, individuals, small business, tax relief, food safety, and nonprofits. And I think Noah will be putting that direct link into the chat room, but they are updated on a real-time basis so that you are not applying for some sort of grant or loan program that does not exist anymore, which is sometimes what happens, and nobody calls you back to let you know that they are no longer funding these programs. And I would also just do a pitch for the census. The census is due September 30th. This is the new deadline, extended deadline. And for every dollar we get from the federal government really is dependent on how many people we count here in the state. And I'll give you a real example. During the CARES Act in April, the state of California got $9.2 billion from the federal government. And that was based on our census numbers 10 years ago. And of course, we have increased in population, and I just please ask you to help us make sure everyone is counted. No one is going to come door to door and check to see whether you are registered this year. So we are really using word of mouth. And then the last thing I would just mention is the state of California has a very good website, and it's www.covid19.ca.gov. And that is our official website. So we encourage you to log on to the latest information, executive orders, programs, funding, and not listen to some of what is going around on social media or Facebook, because a lot of times those people are trying to hook you in to something that is basically a scam. So we want people to please log on to our official state website. And again, please call and reach out to us if we can be of assistance. So those are my pitches before we open it up for any question and answers. But again, you know, it's amazing. We have 201 participants now. This is amazing how many people are logging on today for this important information.
Okay, so should we start with the Q&A now? I mean, there are a few questions actually, but first of all, thank you very much, Fiona Ma, and also Sarah Steenhausen for this very informative and also very interesting talk, and all the details, and the websites that we have in the chat box, so that is definitely very helpful. We have quite a few questions, as I said, and the first question actually that we got was, my wife's long-term care expires in November. Her rent is over $6,000 a month. Will I be able to add her to a state policy once it is approved?
Yeah, no, I'll take a stab at that. That's a really important question. And unfortunately, at this point, because this long-term care feasibility study is still a proposal and it's still in concept, there is no formal program yet. So at this time, that will not be an option. And I would encourage you, though, that if you do have questions about long-term care financing, there are some good resources. I'm thinking of the Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program, which does have some counselors on the issue of long-term care financing and long-term care insurance. So that might be an option. But unfortunately, at this point, we don't have a state program to get onto unless you exhaust resources and end up qualifying for Medi-Cal, which of course is not ideal.
Thank you. So the next question was, we appreciate the livability plan in the master plan includes villages. We want to make a strong request that villages should be recognized in the health plan. I think you already talked about that a little bit, Sarah, Fiona Ma, but do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a very important point that the village model it's about this issue of livability in your community, but I think you're exactly right in that it does impact healthcare, because people your health, where you live really impacts your health. So we need to see, what is called social determinants of health as part of the healthcare system. It has to do with housing and transportation and access to food and to the community service resources that everybody needs. So I would encourage you all to go to the website www.engageca.org. Continue to submit your feedback on this, because while the public stakeholder process is wrapping up, the state still is developing its plan in the next month or month and a half. And it's a good opportunity to reiterate this point about the role of villages across not just livability, but health care as well.
And Sigrid, I would just like to add, we have been going through our reg reforms for our affordable housing allocation dollars, and I've really been pushing the developers to focus on more 2-bedroom units versus 1-bedroom units, because as we age and we need assistance, either someone to come and live with us or perhaps a relative, it really does help to have 2 bedrooms, 2-bath units versus just a 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
That's great.
Makes sense. So if the LTSS proposal is adopted, will the Treasurer support legislation to establish it as a publicly funded benefit?
Oh, absolutely. This stakeholder process is so important, and I'm glad that the governor has taken ownership and convened the stakeholders, as well as put his person in charge. And so we hope that we get some solid proposals, also with solid funding numbers. And of course, right now we are going through a budget deficit, but as we start opening and recovering and getting more resources into our coffers, we need to all be vigilant and speak up and make sure that this is a priority with the governor as well as the legislature when it comes to funding the program that you all are going to suggest and recommend.
So this is a little bit longer here. Aging at home is crucial to security for so many seniors, and the village movement is crucial to helping more seniors age comfortably at home. But aging at home is out of reach for so many seniors who are renters, many of whom are low income and or have limited retirement savings. These seniors remain subject to the whims of their landlords and sometimes high rent increases they cannot afford. They become homeless at an advanced age or are forced to move out of the area where they have roots to find affordable housing. How does the Master Plan for Aging address these needs of this population?
Maybe you can talk about the plan and I'll just talk about some of the things we're working on.
Sure, absolutely. Well, this issue, I want to just thank the person who asked the question, because I would say that this is probably one of the biggest issues, along with long-term care financing, that facing older adults right now is housing cost and affordability and accessibility. And it's definitely been elevated by the stakeholders as one of the most critical issues for the state to address. California is a really difficult state to age in right now because of the lack of affordable housing options, and for renters in particular. So what I would say is that we don't know yet how the plan will address it, because again, the state is will be in the process of developing it. But I think that's why it's wonderful to have Treasurer Ma in her position of leadership. And I think you might have some really good input on what some of the policy options might be, Treasurer Ma.
Yeah, so we all know we have a housing crisis. The governor early on declared he had a goal of building 3.5 million new homes by 2025. That is a very ambitious goal, but we are doing all we can with our tax credits and our bonds to expedite as much affordable housing. And like I said, when we build and help with bonds and tax credits, these units stay affordable for 55 years. And that is important. We also closed a loophole where before the credits would only extend to 15 years, and that would allow folks to come in and buy a building and essentially evict many of the folks that were under a low rent. So we've closed that loophole as well, and we're really doing everything we can to make sure that those that are in an affordable housing unit are able to, again, stay and live in dignity for the rest of their lives in those units. So for that section, we are working on it. For veterans, also, we've issued 4 different bonds for veterans. So if you are a veteran, please go to the www.calvet.ca.gov website, because there is money in the program now to help veterans put down a down payment for a home or even a condo or a townhome these days. So if you're a veteran, please look into that program. It is fully funded.
Thank you. So next question, does Prop 19 limit the benefit to purchases of a single home of value equal to or lesser than the home being sold? If not, this is a gift to the rich and should not be passed.
Well, what I think we are, and I can say personally that as we get older, it gets harder to take care of your property. And so the thinking is that you will want to downsize, right? If you're an empty nester and your kids have gone, to other places now, and you've got a 3-bedroom home, you can't take care of it, so you want to downsize. So Prop 19 is really to allow folks to downsize to a lesser, same or lesser property within the state and be able to move, stay in the state, and still continue to pay that low Prop 13 taxes. If you buy a more expensive house, there will be an adjustment for that increase in your fair market value. So there is an adjustment to make sure people perhaps don't buy a more expensive house and still continue to take their Prop 13 low property tax basis. There will be an adjustment.
Okay. So do you know if funding for assisted living is being discussed?
That's a great question. For assisted living, as you all probably are aware, it's one of the options for people to not have to move into a nursing home, but more of a community-based option. However, it is very expensive and can be upwards of $75,000 per year. There is a small program at the state called the Assisted Living Waiver that allows people who are eligible for Medi-Cal, if they meet the eligibility requirements for this waiver program, they can receive assisted living in the Medi-Cal program. But I will say that it's a very small program. There's only about 5,000 or 6,000 people enrolled, and it's only available in about 15 counties of the state. This has been elevated as one of the big parts of the infrastructure that needs building in terms of having access to affordable options for assisted living, most likely through the Medi-Cal program. So we're hopeful that the state will increase access to the assisted living waiver and make it more integrated into the broader system so that more people can afford it. And again, it just ties into this broader issue of long-term care affordability.
And I'll also let you know, I've been working since I was on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 2002 on how do we make sure that our in-home support service workers are adequately paid. They are the one group in government that does not have healthcare, retirement, or any type of security for doing this type of work, paid sick days also. And these are the folks we want to help us as we age come and take care of certain duties and chores around the house, yet they are the lowest paid with the least amount of benefits. And if you could help me support making sure that our in-home support service workers are able to make a living wage, that they are decently paid with benefits, I think we would find more people getting into this area.
Will there be a public comment opportunity on the proposed master plan for aging?
That's a great question. My understanding is that when the plan is released in December, that will be the state's plan. The time to comment is right now, I would say. This is the critical time. So again, go to engageca.org and make sure to submit your comments. And also to participate on Tuesday's webinar in public comment. If somebody from the village movement is able to comment on some of the issues that have been raised so that the secretary and the state can hear your feedback, I think would be great.
So the next question is about the LTC policy. It says, have a LTC policy. I've had it for over 20 years. The cost jumped from $1,880 per year to $2,600 per year. Will the state policy be cheaper? How many years will the policy be for? My current plan lasts 4 years.
Oh boy, unfortunately, I've heard this issue so many times. I mean, we saw that the PERS system, the long-term care insurance through the public employee retirement system, their policy increased 80% over 1 year. So you're experiencing, unfortunately, a problem that so many people have faced. The study that was just released outlines all the different options for different policy options for a potential state benefit. At this point, we don't have any information on what proposal the state would like to move with and what that might look like. But I would say, I think it's fair to say that that sort of expense is not the type of benefit I think that would meet the criteria for a publicly funded benefit. That's extremely cost prohibitive for anybody. And it shows why the long-term care insurance industry has really struggled and not been able to meet needs. So I don't know, Treasurer Ma, if you have anything else to add.
Well, I think for most of us, that have a pre-existing condition or have had family members who have health issues, right? Having that universal health care option that covered California, Obamacare as they call it, has been really, really important for many of us to access and be able to afford, more quality healthcare than just hoping that we don't get sick or get into an accident. So I think as we all age and we see the need and the gaps that are out there, this will also be something that is going to be worked into our long-term, covered California budget.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
So I hear the phrase affordable housing, but what financial status equates with the phrase?
Yeah, so affordable housing, typically the state funds under 60% average median income. So really supports projects that are for the very low and the low income folks here in the state. So that's where the affordable housing bonds and the tax credits are usually focused. And the big gap is called the missing middle. The workforce housing is the group of folks that, maybe 2 workers in a family, firefighters, nurses, hospital workers that are having the most amount of difficulty accessing housing because there is no real subsidy for that. I have an ad hoc advisory committee. It's called the Affordable Housing, Economic Development, and Opportunity Zone Ad Hoc Committee, where we are looking at creative options to help the missing middle or the middle income workforce folks who want to stay here in the state of California but are finding it very difficult. So we issued a press release, we've gotten some ideas, and again, you know, if you have any ideas or want to help us and participate, you know, please let us know. But we understand that that is the gap right now for Californians.
So the next question is a very interesting question. This is a question suggestion that combines age-dependent problems with environment and climate change issues. I am 82 and need electricity for medical reasons. I have been trying to get solar with a battery for my home, but it has been held up for 2 months with no end in sight because the El Cerrito Building Department will not review the proposals. Should not proposals for solar be given some sort of fast track for review? Could a mandate for that be from the state level? Every individual household that puts in solar at its own expense is benefiting all of California and the world.
Yes, absolutely. You know, if you have difficulty with a jurisdiction, again, please email me at askfiona@treasurer.ca.gov, and we will make that phone call to figure out why it's taking so long for you to get your solar up and running. I would also encourage you to keep in touch with your assembly members and your senators. They are the individuals who can run these type of bills. They also have budget responsibilities. The governor puts out his budget on January 15th, and then the legislature has an opportunity to weigh in on those budget priorities as well. And so to the extent that these type of, you know, every person should have solar or a battery backup system, you know, how do we support either funded or with some sort of tax incentive or reimbursement program, you know, please engage your state assembly members and senators on these great ideas.
Transportation is very important to seniors. What can be done to improve local dial-a-ride services to be door-through-door instead of curb-to-curb service?
Oh, again, I think, you know, California is not one, you know, it's not one, what do I call it? California is very, very diverse, and it's not one stop. I'm having problems with that word. What is it called? One fit, you know, it's not, let's see. Every problem cannot fit every situation for the state of California. It'll come to me. But for communities that can accommodate a door-to-door type of service, you know, we can always create pilot programs with the different transportation agencies. And there are different grant and loan programs to accommodate different communities when you have creative ideas. So again, if you have a community that is more appropriate for a door-to-door versus a curb-to-curb, just let us know. And again, we would really like to work with you on that. My agency also helps fund transportation-related projects.
California used to have an extensive older adult program run through adult schools. This program included senior centers that provided learning opportunities, socializing, health monitoring, and nutrition for seniors. The state defunded these programs in 2009. Some of these programs managed to hang on, and the program could be regrown. Does the state have any plans to restore funding for these programs?
Yeah, so I was in the legislature again during the Great Recession, and it was really tough because we faced a $45 billion deficit overnight that we weren't prepared for. So a lot of programs were defunded, some were refunded, and some never got refunded again. So we encourage you, you know, I know that there were a lot of, you know, community centers that had programming, adult day healthcare, transportation, food programs, socialization, rehabilitation. A lot of them were cut, but again, reach out to your assembly members and your senators, invite them to your program, you know, educate them, talk about the need to restore the funding that was taken away, or, you know, put more funding into these needed programs, because times have changed and communities have changed and resources have changed. But it's also up to you to exercise your voice and let us know what is a priority for all of you.
People are likely to need help in the moment of crisis, upon returning home, for example, after hospitalization, after a stroke or heart attack, or death of a life partner. In that moment of crisis, is there one place, service, phone number, website, people can go to find the right help at that critical moment?
Well, I would say to the person asking this question, you've hit the nail on the head with another one of the biggest issues that's trying to be tackled in the development of the master plan, which is, even if you have a wonderful system of services and supports, people don't know where to get the services that they're entitled to right now, or even what's available, and especially in these moments of crises. So at this point, I would say your health plan should be able to help you, but that is not always the right place to go. There are area agencies on aging, but again, they're not 24/7 available. So there's a movement called the Aging and Disability Resource Connections Program, which is, we're hoping, as Treasurer Ma said, through her legislation, AB 1287, that called on the state to make that model statewide as part of the master plan. That would be one sort of solution. Aging and Disability Resource Connections are supposed to help people navigate the system when they're in moments of crisis or when they're planning for what they need. So unfortunately, at this point, without an integrated service delivery system, it's very hard for people sometimes to get the care they need when they need it and responding in the emergency situations.
Okay, then there is one more question about solar. On the question of solar, there are homeowner associations like my own that don't allow solar panels to be put on their roofs, since the homeowner association maintains the roofs. Is there anything at the state level that can force a change?
Don't allow solar power. Yes, of course. I mean, that's what your legislators are there for, is to legislate and to institute the laws. So I understand that homeowners associations are really difficult, some of them to navigate, and they have certain laws that may not apply to what your communities want. So yes, the legislature does have powers over making changes to your homeowners associations.
Then there's one question about Prop 15. Do you support Prop 15 to close the loophole to get $12 billion a year, 60% to go to our communities for services?
Yeah, so as your treasurer, I am right now in the market for selling bonds, and I have to restrict what I say outside of what the governor has proposed in his budget. However, the governor yesterday did come out and support Prop 15.
And this seems to be the last question here. If there were one specific action you want each of us to go back to our organizations and work on in the next 30 days, what would it be?
Sarah?
Well, my response, I think I love that question. I think what I would do is organize and develop the priorities. So what's your first priority for the master plan? What's your second priority? And figure out a strategy to communicate that at this critical time. Because a lot of times there's so many really critical issues. For the state to be able to hear what they need to act on immediately, the more that you can communicate that, the better. I would say, what I've heard, it's the long-term care financing crisis that really the state needs to know this is something that people expect to be resolved, and that there needs to be commitment and leadership on it. I don't know, Treasurer Ma, if you have other thoughts.
Well, the legislative session just ended, so there are a number of bills on the governor's desk. So if you are following any of them, now is the time to weigh in and, you know, write or email or send letters to the governor if you are supporting any of the bills. In addition, the legislators are going to be starting to work on their legislative packages for 2021. So for some of the ideas that came through the chat, again, reach out to your legislator, your assembly member, and your senators. They are looking for good bill ideas for 2021 right now.
There is still one question coming in about COVID. Actually, with COVID in full effect and our older adults being really stuck in the house and community centers being shut, what are we doing to help said seniors stay active or engaged?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I know my dad only goes out a couple of times a day. He goes out to get his newspaper through the mailbox, maybe picks up his lunch, and then takes our 2 dogs out to Golden Gate Park for a walk every day. The governor did institute a program that could help seniors with meal programs. Noah, I don't have it on hand right now, but Noah will type that in the chat room if you are homebound and you're looking for meals to be delivered, working with our local business owners. I think that is an amazing program. The program that helped folks who are homeless have a hotel room. That program helped a lot of people, but unfortunately that expired. But if people believe that that was a worthy program, again, let your legislators know, let your governor know. And I do think this virtual Zoom way of meeting has really helped connect us. We no longer have to go to a certain site to see each other. With issues on transportation and COVID now, being able to have more of these Zoom meetings, I think has really helped to connect us again, to help socialize us, to have that person-to-person contact, which is what I think was missing the last, the first 3 months when people were just panicked and listening just to the news every day, but not really able to ask the questions we're asking today and to really, find the support amongst each other. So those are the things at this moment I think are really working for us during COVID-19. But again, as soon as we can find a vaccination where we can feel safe again, getting out and about like normal, we all need to, as I say in my office, my 4 W's: wear your mask, watch your distance, wash your hands, and we are all in this together.
Although it was actually already answered by Sarah, I would still like to read that question. What time on Tuesday is the public meeting? How do we access? And I encourage everybody to go to the chat because Sarah put in, and also Noah, they put in some information about that. And in general, I mean, if you want a little bit more information, some people posted links and answered some of the questions. So please go to the chat and have a look at that. So I think that's about it. Okay, Treasurer Ma, I invite your parents to check out San Francisco Village. So
all right, I will. Thank you.
So she put the link in there too. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you so very much, Fiona Ma and Sarah Steenhausen, for spending a Sunday afternoon with us, and it was very informative, very helpful. I mean, thank you also to Deborah, of course, and to Noah. And yeah, we hope to see you back maybe. And also I want to repeat that our next Arts and Culture event is on Tuesday, September 22nd, and Robert Reich will talk to us. So I invite you all to come again.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye, thank you.